So today we have an episode I am super excited about because we share. I do feel like we share a lot of interests, also like a
Yeah.
little bit like music wise and game wise. And I feel the projects you're working on, find so inspiring, and you have such an interesting take on game design. And today we're gonna jump into several topics. So you are really known, yeah, for one particular game in the past, and now working on a game which I'm hyping already since I heard about that game at the very first time. I
Awesome.
think I think you know my panic hype all the time. Every time you post
Oh,
something.
I love seeing that. Thank you so much. It gives us a lot of energy, all the positivity. It's definitely been an experimental journey for the whole team, and so to see people latch onto it like that gives us so much energy here as we finalize the project. Thank you so much.
You fully deserve this. But let's
Thank you.
start before we talk about that game. Let's directly start talking about you. So, like, this sort of podcast is
Cool.
mainly about the people behind game development, to understand better what is driving them, what is sort of inspiring them. And again, I see so many inspiring visions coming from your side. So maybe you want to just jump into and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Cory Davis, and I'm definitely a strange game developer. I love to get involved with a lot of things along the way that we'll probably talk about more in detail today. But to begin with, I started out being almost obsessed with the kind of first experience that I had when I saw 3D for the first time. And 2D art for me was big when I was a really little kid. My dad let me use his really early custom-built computer back then. It was called an 8088 to do some of my very first digital art projects back then. And I just every moment I thought, wow, there's so much potential here, and I think I still feel that way. Like we're still on the cusp of greatness of things that we can't imagine within this space in particular. But that went forward until the technology progressed and the hardware progressed, and I got my chance to start building some things in 3D. Still very much just with my friends, just as you know, as a 10, 11-year-old, things like that. And then I was into games, but then I got into 3D games, and when that happened, I realized that I wanted to be able to like make my own levels, and I also have always been I've always been into music, and started out with my mom's a piano teacher. She tried to force me into that most of my life, which I appreciate because I learned a lot. But then I moved to guitar when I was about 10 or 11. Really always into music and its kind of connection to games and immersion. And so obviously 2D games they do that extremely well too, especially now we see that, and they can really trigger your imagination. But for me, I was feeling like I could go into another reality, or I could create a reality that we could go into with me and my friends and things like that. Started building levels for Doom 2 that even had some of my MIDI music in it and stuff like that, and then Quake and Unreal Tournament, and then also around that same time LithTech, and a lot of people didn't like the LithTech engine because it was sort of strange, and but it could do some beautiful things if you really dove deep into it. So I became a big fan of everything that Monolith was working on way back then. So games like Blood and Blood 2 and Shogo, and then that eventually led me into the Alien vs Predator stuff that they were working on, and I wanted to build levels for that, so I did a lot of that. And I got together with friends. For me, game development was a lot like being in a band. I was always in a band, and I was always trying to make games. And and really with similar tone. I think I've always been trying to go for something dark and mature and mind bending. And games, when music and games come together with interactivity, it's kind of crazy how powerful it is. So it just brought me forward step by step by step. Um, I really didn't think that making games could be any sort of industry or a job, for example, until I got into architecture, and then I ended up really loving the connection of architecture and games as well. And so I started studying architecture, and I went to Texas Tech to go to architecture school. And while I was there, a number of my professors saw the work that I was doing in Half-Life with mods with my friends, and they said, "You need to pursue this. This is what you really should. This is what you really should do. Your imagination can run wild in that space, and so go there and be creative." And I took their advice and started to get more serious about it at that point. And so that eventually led me to more modding with friends. I had a Half-Life mod that kind of it's funny now looking back, but it definitely changed my life because of the way that people reacted to it. Me and my friends made a dodgeball mod, and it started out just being literally throwing the grenades, the like square grenades that are in Half-Life at each other. Um, and then one night I was up really late and noticed that there were hundreds of servers up across Europe playing this game competitively that we had very simply sort of just blocked out. And and that was another one of those moments where I was just hooked. I was like, um, this is so exciting to see people reacting to this and being affected by it, and being better at it than I was, who was involved with the design too. So it's been little by little going down these paths, and now things have gotten definitely really exciting. Having the chance to work with my current partner and in our studio, Eyes Out.
I have no words. This is crazy. Like I could listen to this forever. This is
Oh,
um,
thank you.
this is so inspiring. This is like the way you're describing the game development, because like from the outside, sometimes people who are not in games, for them games are often this very weird space which many people don't understand. Some of them describe it highly technical, the other one always come with those this is like wasting time and so on and so forth, or like the worst thing like around addiction and so on and so forth. um, but this is something which I find so truly beautiful about the project. And I could, again, what you just said, this is so perfectly round and wonderfully described. For
Thank you.
me, is game and game development is so creative. It's art, and like everything you
Yeah,
described, especially your way coming from this like 3D realm, like in architecture, but also like putting the musical aspects to it. This is so beautiful.
thank you so much. And yeah, it's never really been something that I felt like I was pursuing directly. I felt almost like the medium was coming for me because it does seem to be the pinnacle of where all of these things come together. And for me personally, I don't want to be just involved with one aspect. I think that my favorite pieces of artwork, even film and music, they're a combination of a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different mediums, at least experience with them, even if they don't directly combine them. And so I love working with people who have a little bit different perspective on where, gameplay can come from and where the worlds that we create can come from. And working with people that have a wide range of just background as
Mm.
well, from other industries even too. It's really eye-opening. There's a lot to learn as a game developer. I think that's something that I'm reminded of every day, is that we still have many steps to take up this path, and there's a lot of great things ahead of us, and it's just it's really fortunate to be able to try and push those boundaries and to have support from people like you when we do that. It's unbelievable.
This is what you're describing. I mean, with games, you're expressing so much of yourself within games, and then when you see how it resonates with people. And there's one game which I would directly pick up here, which got a lot of attention because it was so special and taking a very other twist. Maybe you want to share a little bit the story, how you got there, the path, how you got actually from studying architecture and being a musician into actually getting into game development and then working on really big titles.
Yeah. So at first it was an opportunity to work on the Fear and Condemned projects, and that was where I felt like, if you think of it like a sport, like I was like a rookie at that moment. Like I always kind of thought of it that way. Like I'm here to soak in everything I can from individuals who I really respect. There was two teams at Monolith at the time, a Fear team and a Condemned team, and I got to be involved with both of them over different like kind of phases while I was there, and got to learn a lot from developers, some of which are even retired from the industry now. But as a young developer, just a lot of people to look up to, and that was a studio that was kind of like a dream for me to be able to work at. And so the fact that I had made levels and things like that for their previous games really helped get me in the door. And once I had the opportunity, there wasn't any like debate in actually, and my wife is part of this too. My wife Julie, she's always been a huge supporter of this path that I'm on, and both of us looking at that opportunity, we knew it was the right one. And then there I had the chance to work on all sorts of things. Sometimes the things that I wanted to work on, which maybe had to do with architecture or had to do with implementing music or pushing the sound design in areas or pushing the horror elements in areas. But then towards the end of all the projects I worked on there was this moment where being able to understand the technical side of the engine and being able to understand especially the lighting aspects of what we were doing there with real-time lighting for the first time at Monolith, and being able to figure out how to get scenes to run that were great scenes that weren't necessarily my scenes, but they weren't going to ship with the game unless we could get them to light properly and run on the platform. And so there was a lot of just making things finalized at that point, and so I got a lot of experience with that too. So the technical side is also really intriguing to me. But at the end of Fear 2, I had been moved over to Fear 2 as I was there for about a year as they made me lead game designer, and that was exciting. But the project was already very kind of set in stone by the time I got there, and it really needed to wrap up. And so we were wrapping it up, and then essentially there was a moment where everyone was looking at the game. None of us were quite happy with it yet, and then there was an opportunity for another 6 months of development. And I had come off directly from Condemned 2, and so I had been like in a pretty heavy process for that for a while, and I really wanted to ship Fear 2 and then see what was next, And so I took a little break, and at that moment I got a call from 2K, from some people there that said, "Hey, we've got an interesting thing going on. It seems to match your the things that you're into. Would you be willing to come and speak about it with us?" And there was an individual named Greg Goby, who's still a creative director in games, and Anthony DeLuca, and John Chowanek, and a bunch of people that to me were like once I got there and I got to meet them, I realized that they were doing something really special. They were already like on the path towards BioShock, and they were the team that had been involved with the Mafia games and then eventually Borderlands as well. And so I felt there was definitely a spark there, and there was something special. And they spoke to me about the opportunity to create an experience that really dives into the heart of darkness, and that is unflinching, and that even dives into the psychological nature of nightmarish wartime experiences. And that it was with this crazy team in Berlin, and they needed someone to be their lead designer. And so that was really interesting to find out about. I was really excited about that. It was another one of those moments, definitely, where I was like, this could be the thing. I didn't know much about Berlin. Um, I knew that I felt like I wanted a change, and I wanted to work on something unique. I wanted to feel like I could control my own destiny with the project, because I had just come off a project where I was like, just finish the damn project, um, and um, and where we could do something that once again pushed the boundaries. And I had to have this kind of like trust with the individuals on the publishing side. But then when I went to Berlin, my mind was just blown. Like I went there just for an interview, and the city itself was so inspiring. The studio, everyone that I met there was unbelievable. They really gave me like, this is what a Berlin experience is like, over the course of like 3 days. And by the time, and the whole team also came out to really, even if I wasn't going to be hired, they're just really friendly people, and really inspiring people. In Berlin, Berlin is just full of artists and musicians and creatives of all sorts. And I just ran into that, and I was like, I would love to live here. And this project seems so amazing. I remember the last night that I was there, um, one of our character designers, who ended up being our lead character designer, came up to me and asked me, "Do you think that this could be the first ever anti-war game?" And I had been, walking throughout Berlin that whole day, seeing bullet holes in the street signs near the studio, and the learning about all the terror that had happened there, and that was still very fresh for everyone there. And then hearing that question, and then realizing that this is an opportunity like I've never experienced before, and this is going to be maybe the debate that takes me personally into a new space, like as we come together with our perspectives from America, where we're referencing wartime scenarios that America's involved with and has even caused in many cases, and then also the perspective of people globally and how they see that. And so we're getting the chance to work on that project with a team that had 18 different nationalities, that had people that spoke so many different languages and had so many different experiences, had so many different personal experiences. And then that all coming to the table and discussing how that relates to the meaning of life, to the heart of darkness that's found within humanity that we seem to drift to. And there was just a huge spectrum of perspective there. And so I came back to the U.S., and within a day, I knew that it was time to move to Berlin. And me and Julie moved out there, and it was one of the best things that I've ever had the chance to do. I got to live there for 5 years, and the project was really, really small when I first got there. So there was a lot of opportunity to connect with the owners of the studio, as well as to build up a team, like a new sort of team. There hadn't been AAA game development in Berlin, and we weren't sure that that's what we were, but eventually that's kind of where we ended up. So it felt like a very new thing for Berlin, and then also developing something that is about war and that's meant to be unflinching and that's meant to be devastating in many cases and cause you to question your own beliefs and your thoughts and your actions regarding those things in Germany was really exciting. And it was something that I knew from the beginning we couldn't fake it. We couldn't like use this as a marketing tool or something like that. This had to come from within us. Or the game would just get banned. So it was both because it's the right thing to do and also because I knew that we would be held accountable for those things. It, it was it, it was an amazing experience, and it was one that went up and down. It was one where there were difficult times in the project. There was times when the project got stalled for a while on the funding side and things like that. There was some big saves by individuals on that project, and it took, even after it came out, it took a year or two for me to look back and to feel the full impact of it, and now it feels like a haunting dream that just that comes with me all the time.
There are so many things to unpack here. This is like I really love this idea also, like how in the first part you mentioned like what shaped you and how you became from this many different inspirations you had in your life, the many learnings, how this shaped you as a creative. And then especially what you said that working together with a team with so many different backgrounds in that regard, which are brought together to work on these creative visions, like all those different creative heads with so many different backgrounds. This is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Before we dive deeper into the development, I have one weird pressing question,
Oh, sure.
which I wouldn't know to answer myself. So because you mentioned that this was a war game and this was such a fresh topic and this was moving so many of the people, especially in this area back then, and we are living in very weird times these days, and
Yeah.
was just questioning myself, and this is a question I'm asking myself actually since a couple of months. What is moving us right now? What is at the moment the most pressing things? It seems to be so many, to be honest. But I don't know
Does.
if this is a weird question to add here, but do you have any thoughts on that?
I I think every day I'm reminded of the things that we were worried about back then, and I'm haunted by the fact that they weren't ever solved. They were maybe reinterpreted or something like that. But the humanitarian crises, the wars, the violence, the I would say just the money grab that happens across the world that destroys communities and has no humanity whatsoever. It continues. I think that the experience of the people that try to help out with this, as well, I mean, like physically, as well as those who are soldiers involved with this, it is still like for them personally, it's a very nuanced situation. It's one that like I never feel like I can, unless I'm personally involved or I've spoken with someone who is, it's it's not my place to tell people what to feel. It's more to invite them to feel, invite
Mm.
them to think about it, invite them to I wouldn't say dwell on it because there are too many things right now that are that are surrounding us that you can fill your whole every moment with terror if that's what you're looking to do. But I think just as important now. It's maybe more important now. All the things that we were speaking about in that game, and there's a lot more to be talked about now. There's a lot of things that have happened since we released that game that I never thought could be possible for humanity, and I was very naive. And I don't think that the conversation stops. It's one that was just started then. It's
Mm.
one that should continue. I think games can be a very powerful medium for continuing that conversation and for inviting people to maybe poke their head out of the bubble they're in and think a little bit differently, or at least look within themselves. I think that there's so much that we have as humanity in common, and there's so much to love between each of us, and our shared histories and cultures, and even the differences about us are the thing that is the most exciting.
Mm.
Being able to be around people that just like a game team, but as a group of humans in general. It's 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 being around people that are different than me that makes me the most comfortable and most excited. And I love being challenged on my own preconceptions. I think being wrong about things is part of the journey that we're on, and we have to admit that, and sometimes we have to learn and move forward, and it's really hard. It really is.
There's so many things which I can take as a direct quote. This is so many really beautiful things you're saying in a very perfect way.
Thank you.
There was a what you just said also about games. I fully agree that games can bring us together, thinking about certain topics in a way some other mediums might not be able to. I just have to tell this anecdote because again, you're also in this heavy music scene. If I
Yeah.
And I was like, sometimes people don't really understand why I love going to festivals and love going to concerts. But I were like, I was at Wacken recently, which is this metal music festival in north of Germany, and it was both Gojira and it was Gojira and Papa Roach. Very
Whoa.
different ones, but both were making a very interesting point, and namely, like Papa Roach, obviously, with the topic of suicide,
Hmm.
and they made a very strong, point around that, and talked at this specific moment. Hey, you are all here now. You're gonna hear our song now, and probably many of you are resonating with that. And just think of being now part of a community. Look around you. So many people are here, might have the same thoughts, but you are not alone. And just look
Yeah,
around. And this is so powerful about concerts and music,
it is.
and it's bringing people together. And yeah, I just like had the thought because when we are playing video games, like every time we do something which someone else has done, probably in a way different way than we did it, we are sharing something, and we are still part of this community. If I would dig deeper here, what do you think, like especially the medium video games could do in your point of view, what other mediums cannot do, or like what is this good one in?
Well, I mean, the one that always comes to mind first for me is that it games can offer a unique space for immersion that involves interactivity. Obviously, you can be immersed in your own mind just from music, or just and from nature, or just from a piece of art that you're looking at. But this element of interactivity, I think, uh, it it sets us apart, and it also combines in a way that creates this powerful synesthesia that we're all feeling together. It's like a magic that's almost impossible to describe. Um, and I think so many people feel that, and they're attracted to that. And just like when you're standing in that concert, like you maybe wouldn't have a first grade, dinner with every single person at that concert. But at the same time, you're all on a path, and and everyone's evolving, and there is a connection between you that's deep, um, from the music, and from being a human here on the earth at the same time in the same place. And so it's hard a lot of times, I think, not to judge one another too harshly as well. I've made major changes in my life, and I've seen people make changes in their life to become better people. Um, and games can open a door for that, and music can open a door for that. But in games, you can allow people to actually make some decisions and feel like even if they didn't make the decisions, they were actually there, that it happened to them, and it may affect perspectives in the future. It may affect decisions and decision making in the future, and I just think that that's really beautiful. I and the there is a, you know, there's something really special about being all in the same room with someone, with other people like you are, or outside, or but just being in a group. And we get that chance every now and then as game developers. But I think that learning more about who the people are that are attracted to the same types of games that you are, for whatever reason, um, that's a real connection, and that's a real community. And so any way that we can bolster that and come together, I think it's important. I think we need to do more of it, and not just in a competitive environment, in ways that we can have meaningful conversations as well. And there's games um, that that are pushing for that within the game themselves. Maybe that's part of the journey that we're all on in this sort of experimental game development ladder that we're climbing.
Let's jump back to your time at Berlin. What was
Yeah.
your role in this project, and what was your development philosophy? What were your design ideas?
Yeah, it was a really unique project because when I got there, there was 11 of us there, and that included 5 owners of the company. And the previous game that they had made was called Jaeger, and it was an awesome game on the original Xbox. I had remembered it. That's how when I saw the job posting for Jaeger Studio over 10 years later, I remembered that game, and I was excited about it. But then um, I was brought on. Actually, at the very beginning, there was a lot of turmoil at the studio. It was difficult for the owners of the studio to bring in new people and to start to give ownership and start to grow the company in a new way, especially for something that wasn't necessarily in the creative zone of where they thought they might have headed in the past, or in the future. They really liked a lot of aspects of what we were doing, but at the same time, definitely this whole dark, mature, and I've mentioned this word a few times, like kind of unflinching look at wartime experiences wasn't really the zone that they had previously expected to go in. And so I, at first I was there really almost felt like a consultant. 2K was like, you're going there. We have a producer there. We're trying to figure out what this project is. There's a vertical slice that's more of like a technology showcase, and then once I was there um, and so I came in as a designer at first, and then once I was there for a month, there were issues with some of the designers that had been there and the ownership of the company and with 2K, and 2K brought me in and said they wanted me to be lead designer and creative director of the project. And so that was a that was a frightening day. That definitely a day when the project could have gotten canceled. I was lucky that I had made some really strong relationships with the folks at 2K at that point, and also I had a lot of confidence in, especially the technical side of what Jaeger could do. At that point already, I knew that we could do something really great, and that the developers at Jaeger were in it for the right reason. And so there were a lot of budget and pitch discussions with 2K from at that moment, and more prototyping and things like that. And then a fella named Francois Coulon came on as well, he was the creative director along with Greg Goby of the original Splinter Cell,
Mm.
and a really great person. Francois, he's like he's like the most genuine and hilarious and French person you're ever going to meet, and in all the best ways. And so I definitely, as a friend, I fell in love with this person, and creatively we really connected. And he I think brought a perspective to the level that I was at, because I shared creative direction with him on the project, from Europe, that I wouldn't have had necessarily. I mean, I had it from people on the design team and on other teams at Jaeger, but he could force me to listen to those things sometimes, and sometimes you need that. And he comes from his own history was super unique. Like his family literally lived in Normandy during World War II, and so this was a very special project to him as well. And I don't remember a single that, and this is crazy because we worked together for like over 4 years. I don't remember a clash with him. We were on the same page. We loved working together. But he was a 2K employee, and they really trusted him, and they gave us the reins for a long time to do what we wanted to do. So we started experimenting with all sorts of things. The first thing that appeared was the location that we wanted to make the game in, which was a futuristic Dubai. And then from there, this twist of it being filled with billions of tons of sand, and a cataclysm that's caused Dubai to be cut off from the rest of the world. Because we wanted to create a kind of microcosm of the world's, I would say, conflicts at the time, without being directly connected to them, without our characters being able to just call in the U.S. military to do whatever they want or things like that. And so it needed to be a personal experience for these soldiers. So they had to be cut off. They literally had to walk through this storm wall, that the only thing that had passed through it for years is this radio signal saying that this man Conrad may still be alive within the city. And so the project, I think we experimented a lot between like what's a modern shooter, and what makes modern shooters great. Cover shooters were huge at the time. Gears of War 1 was already out. It was really popular. A lot of people thought that was the future of all shooters at that moment. There was also a reboot of Medal of Honor going on. There were several, Crisis and the Far Cry games. A lot of games that definitely weren't going in the same direction as us in terms of narrative and tone, but were considered, the best shooters in the world, or maybe even some of the best shooters of all time. So and working with, especially I would say, a lot of the Germans on my team, they were very particular about what made those shooters good and what made them better than what maybe we were working on. And so this was another debate, that the project really had room in it for people that were focused entirely on this terrifying experience that soldiers have, as well as like the realism and the technical aspect of all the gear and all of the gameplay associated with it, and how realistic it should be. We had a lot of debates about like how action oriented and how action forward the game should be, if we're actually going to if we're going to be serious about the message of this game, and the tone of this game. We'd seen other games that had a similar pitch, but really they just like I'll even bring it up, like games like America's Army, for example, which it's a military propaganda tool, and I've got friends that love playing that game because it's a very realistic shooter, and they love the way the weapons feel and things like that. And so these discussions were going on constantly, and it's it's really easy to slip, I would say, into any of these trajectories, into it being a very like technical, tactical shooter, into it being a very over-the-top action shooter, with just gratuitous gore and violence. It drifting into being just a fully narrative-focused game. Like it wasn't any of those things alone. It was what made it unique was a lot of things coming together, and that debate that went back and forth on the team. And I remember we like at the start, I had to do a lot of discussions about realistic violence and gore. The game had to have realistic violence and gore. There's some scary PowerPoint presentations that I still have that I don't really like to look at because I had to I had I felt, at least at the time, that I had to get really serious about that stuff, and that it couldn't be a cartoon type or even comic book type of experience. That we had to get into the terror of what was happening, and so that was really tough, especially with a lot of people that felt like there shouldn't be that type of violence in games at all, and um, so there was a lot of discussion on that, and then from there we started creating new weapon types. We created just about every modern weapon that you can imagine that was being used in the field at the time, and we started playing with these things together. And I started to get at times this like sort of sickening feeling because like some of these weapons they're way too fun to use. Um, we for some reason I think since Return to Castle Wolfenstein, I wanted to have the chance to create my own flamethrower. That was like something I really, really wanted. Um, not to use in a real wartime scenario, but to kill zombies or something. And I just always loved seeing how like a flamethrower could look in 3D. And so we built a flamethrower, and it was fantastic. And it was like it's hard not to celebrate that sort of thing, but I just got this feeling like, no, people are just going to really enjoy burning civilians and injured and wounded soldiers with this, and we were even enjoying it on our own team. And we had to cut it, and so there was
Wow.
several times where it was like, and even times when we showed the game and we saw people react in ways we go, no, this is not the reaction we hoped that they would have. We hoped that they would pick this up and they would maybe use it and realize how terrified they are of it. The white phosphorus scenes in the game also evolved out of a similar type of experience because you could use that weapon and move it around and use it tactically in the game. And it was far. I hate using the word fun. It's probably not the right word. It was addictive, and it kind of brought out the worst in people.
Wow. And this is such a smart but also bold move to then just be able to see a feature which might be fun and special, but because of ethical standards, to just cut it. So chapeau to that.
Yeah, it was tough. Luckily, there were several people on the team that were fully on board with cutting that, and really, I think by the time we got to like alpha on the project, we've been several years in. I felt like the team really got where we were headed ethically,
Mm.
where we were headed with the tone of the game, and I would have at that point, people would start to come to me with their feelings on a lot of different things. It was a really like razor's edge tightrope type of situation to walk because, we wanted our character to devolve throughout the game and to become a monster by the end. And and just making sure that's happening for the right reasons, that it's happening at the right time, that the people on the team believe that that's why I want to do it as well. I'm not just doing it because it's something that's cool or something that is addictive, like we're saying. But yeah, it was a tightrope the whole 5 years.
But it's like you're saying, like you can create so many powerful experiences as a game developer. But I think this makes us also really responsible of what and how we're developing. And this is like a rare example what you're just presenting, where people are then cutting fun features for the sake of, again, like maybe again thoughts on ethics.
Yeah, yeah, and it was also a dance with the fact that we wanted to go into the psychological aspect of war as well, and I think everyone has a little bit different interpretation of what that might be like, and so we started working with an advisor named Will Macanayole, and I was really lucky to meet him. My parents actually moved near Dubai during the project to a place called Oman. And so every few months I had the chance to travel there and pass through Dubai and have experiences in that region. And their neighbor happened to be a former American Special Forces officer who ran the embassy in Oman, and he found out about the game, and then I started, and he's a very, very athletic, very he's almost like a superhero if you were to look at him, because he's like 6'6". He's huge. He's a Hawaiian guy, and probably one of the biggest soldiers I've ever seen before. Like when he stands with his crew, it's insane. But he had a lot of experiences to share with me. But I would start to go there and talk to him about things that we were doing in the game and say, like, if you were to run into this difficult ethical situation as a special forces officer, what would be the types of conversations that would be happening internally? Would this be an easy decision for you to make? Is this something that there's a right and a wrong way to do, because it doesn't feel like it. And then on top of that, a lot of people on the team feeling like we were pushing the action aspect too far. So we would have Will and his squad videotape themselves doing every move that we decided to put into the game before we were blocking it in. Because there was a lot of discussion about, like, no, someone can't run and put one hand and then slide over the roof of a car, things like that. And then Will show me himself doing it with a knee brace on, because he has a sprained knee, and I'm going, look, he can do it, it's possible. So there was a lot of back and forth about that, but then somehow, and I still don't know how this happened. It's because of the respect he has internally with his people, but he was able to get the general that he worked under to approve his work on the game, and they gave him like carte blanche. So he took me down the rabbit hole of a lot of dark and disturbing things that I never thought that he could show me or be honest with me about.
Oh wow.
And I just, like, all of the things that I thought that I knew became this really dark gray area. And that's how he perceived it too. And and it's yeah, it's hard to not have just like a black or white decision to make at times, especially in situations like what he was sharing with me. And just the heart-wrenching experiences that he shared with me too, when he's involved with families in situations where he couldn't help them, or in situations where, there's people that have made mistakes and there's nothing he can do about it.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and then crazy stuff like jumping out of helicopters into jeeps and all sorts of action stuff too, that they really do a lot of this stuff. Yeah, like I remember one time we had a like a small showcase with some journalists, and in the game, Walker, there's zip lines, and he grabs them and he slides down them, and and it was near one of the start of one of the sections that we were playing, and the journalist turned to me and he said, "You need to fix that. That's that's not realistic. You need to fix that." And I had just done research on the type of gloves that they use specifically for zip lines, and that's what was literally on Walker's hands, and that was because of Will. And so it's funny experiences like that where some things that people thought were over the top were actually the normal things, and then the things that were over the top they thought were the real things. It's crazy.
This is this is like also like it's quite interesting to listen to you because it's very obvious that doing so much background research. This is something I don't think like a lot of gamers have in their mind because they have this experience and they play in this case the soldier, and but there's so much going on in the background. I mean, there's so much
Oh yeah,
background research, and in the end, I mean, I'm. It seems like it certainly shaped you also everything which you heard,
definitely.
and because you jumped so deep into this research and into this topic. So how was this for you? This
It's still haunting. That I've always like I think I mentioned I like working on dark, mature, mind-bending stuff. I remember even at Monolith, like working on, or even just being around concept artists and tuning and designing combat mechanics that were extremely violent in the Condemned games, and walking around the studio at 11 at night and seeing like autopsy stuff on almost everyone's computers, and um, just really violent stuff. It was scary. That there was some real horror within the Monolith studio, and you can feel it in their games. And but then taking that and recontextualizing it to become meaningful to me, um, for me to understand some of the things that maybe I'd seen photos of, or that I'd heard of, or that I'd seen on the news. I remember doing a deep dive on torture methods that were being used by both sides, by all sides, and one of them that made it into the game was called sandboarding, and it's a real thing where essentially they'll stick a person on the ground and push their head into the sand, and then they'll fire an automatic weapon next to their face, just continually until they give them the information they want or whatever, and it chokes them eventually to death. And being like, that's a real thing, like that's actually happening, and then like going and diving in on more and more and more witness accounts of this, and realizing that yes, this is a real thing, and yes, this is something that I want to portray in the game, and do it in a meaningful way. The white phosphorus was something that I don't think I probably would have. I mean, I probably would have heard about it at some point, but digging into that was one of the scariest, few months I can remember in my life. Like just having this feeling also of betrayal, that anyone within the human race would do this to someone else. Just seeing it melt cars, and then continue to melt through the street and then into the ground, like just, and then seeing the discussions about it being a crowd control technique and tactic and things like that, um, just had this horror within it that it's still, like I said, it's haunting. Um, it was tough, and I think when I talked to people on the team, there was definitely a breath of fresh air after the project was over, to be able to maybe disconnect from that at least for a
Mm.
little while. Um, it I think a lot of people on the team held a heavy weight of the 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 truthful references that we were trying to infuse into the experience, and not for marketing reasons.
This is something which is sometimes hidden, that the reality is so much darker than everything that can ever portray things happening in
Yeah.
reality. Or yeah, but let's move away from Berlin. What happened
Cool.
next?
So at at the end of Spec Ops: The Line, there was a few other projects that I had been involved with. The start of Dead Island 2 was happening upstairs at Jaeger, which at the time was exciting. That ended up moving around and things like that after I left, but and there was some discussion about a follow-up to Spec Ops: The Line at the time, but it wasn't the time for it. There was at least going to have to be like, let's see how this does type of situation, because it was pretty extreme for, I think, everyone involved on the marketing and publishing side at the end. Um, and and so I knew eventually I would probably move back to Los Angeles, but at the time there was starting to be like a scene here for games that were really interesting to me. So there were games coming out, a lot of them indie games, some of them from Sony Santa Monica, games like Journey and Unfinished Swan and things like that. I started to really connect with.
Mm.
A game called Dear Esther came out. And I started to really feel like I wanted to get more involved with a slightly smaller project because on Spec Ops: The Line, we started out like really small, and I was able to be in the editor and hands-on a lot, but by the end, we were 170 people, and it was a lot of managing the kind of feeling of the studio and being a kind of an ambassador for the project at the very end, and I wanted to be more hands-on, and um, so I moved back to LA, and I started a studio with some friends here in LA called Tangent Games,
Hmm.
and I had, at the time, I probably always am, but I was really, I would say, I was diving really heavily into cosmic horror and into music. So on Spec Ops: The Line, I had the chance to create the guitar sound, and work with a composer for 4 years, and was really proud of what we did. And I wanted to have more involvement with that, and so I wanted to compose the full soundtrack for my next game, and also somehow figure out still how to be creative director on it. And luckily, I had some friends here that were excited about that too. And so we went to a garage in Glendale, and we started putting together a demo, and then we started pitching it around. But there's a game called Here They Lie, and it's one that takes place entirely inside of the mind of a cosmic being who is reflecting back on the life of humanity billions of years after they've passed.
Hmm.
And it was a great experience to be able to like dive a little bit out of realism and into surrealism and into psychedelic and psychological experience in a non-physical place, and so really enjoyed doing that. We pushed the style of that game a lot. Also, like, there was an opportunity once we got started on that to work on the PlayStation VR, and that was exciting at the time as well. Kind of being at the forefront of that, and how we could immerse people even further. But yeah, I was there at eventually our studio got signed by Sony Santa Monica, and we moved into the Santa Monica Studios building there upstairs.
Cool.
So that was a dream come true. We were just like right across from the Unfinished Swan team right there, and and just a very inspiring studio to be around, lots of people to bounce ideas off of and things like that. And then they gave me a recording studio space that I could use 24 hours a day there. That was unbelievable. So Here They Lie has a lot of crazy experimental audio in it because of that, experiments that we did late at night there. Um, and then also that game was really interesting because like it was a reflection back on humanity, and it was meant to discuss like is humanity worthwhile enough, like have we proven ourselves enough to be brought back again, like
Mm.
is this, if humanity was an experiment by some cosmic being, um, and it ended, would they would how would they feel about us, and so that what I wanted to do was to actually capture what what a lot of people around Los Angeles, where I was going to the studio every day and things like that, what their thoughts were on like the current state of humanity, and why they thought we were here on Earth and where they thought we were going when we
Mm.
die. And so I spent a bunch of time in different areas in Venice Beach or in Skid Row, just walking around, talking to random people. Usually they would think that you're trying to sell them something or convince them of something, but once you got over that to the point where they realize, oh, that you just want to know what I think, we got some of the most interesting stuff ever, and I learned so much. It was a really fun project.
This is so fun that you're mentioning this. But like, if someone approaches you and would ask you, "Hey, what you are doing? How you are doing? Who are you?" Everyone thinks immediately it's a scam. There is like
Yeah,
this cannot be friendly. This cannot be like a real interest. This must be scam. Like it's so
yeah,
weird.
it is, and yeah, we we got into some strange conversations with people that were definitely like, they had arrived in LA that night, running from something really difficult in their lives, really interesting perspectives. And then, some that you would expect as well. But I think even the ones that like you might predict ahead of time what they would say, they would always have some twist. I think every individual that I spoke with, they would have some twist that would just be like, wow, they really do believe that thing. That's super interesting. Um, and then, yeah, like you said, just creating a space where they're disarmed because you're actually not there to convince them of anything.
Mm.
It was a blast. Yeah, some of my teammates came and they were like, "You should keep doing this as a podcast." And I've always kind of thought about like
Please
revisiting
do
that,
this. It's like
but it's
one of the most frustrating things, that like every time you see someone, I mean, this happens to all of us. We immediately have a picture of who they are and what they're supposed to do, and like I'm sure you are having experiences yourself. For me, as this typical woman in a game dev realm, I get those like constant stereotypes. So
yeah,
if I'm like standing next to someone, I will be always. I'm not like a person myself, sort of like nobody will ask you, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm always like, "Oh, you are his girlfriend, or you are his social media
wow,
manager, or you are." You name them, so people immediately make assumptions about who I'm supposed to be. I'm like probably most of the time this plus one, but it's like
wow,
just ask people always, hey, who are you, what do you do, and this is, and then
yeah,
you get the stories. And so please do your podcast and show people a little bit that there are like stories behind people, and everyone has their own story, and it's okay to have their own story.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I will do that one day as soon as as soon as I untangle some of these dev kits. It's, but
You have some things happening and going on right now, right?
yeah, I have multiple dev kits from each of the platforms for Sleep Awake because we're doing like final polish and testing and stuff like that and capturing and yeah, my studio is so strange because like when I started the project, it was like a purely a music studio, and it had evolved that to that from being purely a game studio, and now it's almost back to a game studio. But like I'm sitting here on top of a synthesizer,
Really?
and yeah, and it's I mean music is like I think when I get when I get stuck on something or when I'm having trouble feeling inspired, having it at my fingertips it's really it's become really important to me, and so there is always like a flow for me between being able to like what I get to focus on and I have to be really kind of just okay with that. Like if I fight against it too hard, it causes a lot of troubles. There's a time for everything, and sometimes the main thing that I need to be doing in here is working in the editor and testing the builds of the game and capturing the game, and then other times that I get to get creative with making stingers or working on music for myself even. And my partner, we haven't even. I think I just mentioned I have a partner, but
Yes, yes. Take us
my
to the
partner.
beginning of Eyes Out. So let's.
Okay,
How did this happen? How did you meet?
yeah,
Who is your partner?
yeah. So I think I mentioned that I love working on teams with people from different backgrounds. Like if I can work on teams with people who maybe haven't even worked in games before, but they're really talented at other things and they learn quickly, that's a really exciting thing for me. Um, and towards the end of my previous project, I was working on, it was called Here They Lie. I was finishing the soundtrack for that, and my partner, whose name's Robin Finck, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him. He had become interested in game audio through a person named Mike Wilson that happened to be his neighbor when he unzipped his tent at Burning Man one year. So he met Mike there. Mike was he's from id, and then he was one of the founders of Devolver, and he's been a huge supporter to our studio and a mentor for us since the beginning. But at that moment, he really connected with Robin. And the thing about Robin that's interesting is that people know him as a musician, but he's a creative in every sense of the word. He's a visual artist. He's a storyteller. I would say that he brings his his soul and his heart and his own tone to the things that he works on. Not just his music. The music is part of what he is, and his music has always been an inspiration for me. And so there was a game audio group meetup here in LA, and someone who knew me met Robin and said, "You've got to meet Cory. Cory's working on this crazy game at Sony Santa Monica." And so and that was a friend of mine named Brian Didamonico, who's also he's a sound designer and a musician. And so he told me about Robin, and so through Brian, we invited Robin to Sony Santa Monica, and got to put the headset on him towards the end of development. And yeah, my studio was kind of like this, right? It was a complete mess, just like every version of because the final PSVR headset wasn't out yet, and so I had like 3 different versions that I was testing on, and as well as all of my music gear and stuff like that. But Robin just fit right in there, and it was a blast showing him the game. And then from there, we started talking about music, but that led me really quickly down a rabbit hole with him where I realized that he's somebody that I would love to collaborate with. He's somebody that brings something to the table that I don't have. He's somebody that could help push the boundaries further if we could, join forces. And so we finished up Here They Lie and stayed in contact with Robin. I think we had him over to the studio every chance we got. Always love hanging out with Robin.
I
I
just
don't,
need
I
to
know,
add for
oh, go ahead.
everyone like who is listening to the podcast or watching the video, like Robin Finck is very known in the world of music. So that this name is known if you're in the music world, for being the guitar player for Nine Inch Nails, previously also Guns N' Roses, and like just such a creative and wonderful person. It's so nice.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, everyone who I've met that's met Robin, like, he's he really is very extremely thoughtful, and like I mentioned, he's very creative. That's where his foundation is, and it's not a difficult thing for him to get creative, and that's a really fun environment to work in, and to work with. But we started. I started some new prototypes with the studio I was with then, and working with Robin more in a musical capacity at that point. But every time we got together, this world started to come to light. We started to just go further and further. Like, what would our world be like that we create together? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? and and we knew within, I would say, a month after that we needed to make this thing a reality. And so we started talking about this realm that exists for the two of us between sleep and death, and a connection between sleep and death, and so and how that ties into the necessity to sleep as a human here on Earth to get strength and health and rejuvenation. It seems to be core to every aspect of humanity, and of existence. And also, there always for me has been this question of, is there some connection between where we go when we sleep and when we die, or is there, maybe there's not, but we don't know. And there are some similarities between sleep and death, and so we started diving in on a lot of things, on mythology that also discusses this, also cosmic horror that delves into strange realms of sleep and things like that, and then what lies beyond the gate of sleep, and talking a lot about dreams and hallucinations, and how these things are connected as well, and kind of each of our own psyche and how we interpret the world around us, and we definitely share some things as humans with similar hardware up here, but do we actually see the same thing, all of us? Is this reality as similar for every one of us as we believe it to be? But from there, we decided we were going to make a prototype, and we built a small prototype, and we pitched it to Epic Games, and Epic was kind enough to give us a mega grant. And so that was a really exciting moment for Robin and I. It was a moment where we knew we could start to make this a reality, and we could start to bring in some of the people that have been such key creators on this project that's become Sleep Awake. And from there, we began to experiment a lot with, like I'd mentioned, this realm that exists between sleep and death, these surreal, dreamlike experiences. and then also everything from psychedelics to herbal remedies to botany to to a world a few hundred years in the future that's the kind of last refuge for humanity, where sleep becomes extremely dangerous, where those who fall asleep disappear and are never seen again. And then from there emerged our protagonist, our main character. Her name is Katja, and she grew up in this last known city on Earth that's called the Crush, and it's a very terrifying place. It's a place that was forced together because of man-made cataclysms and environmental disasters, and this element of sleep becoming dangerous has caused society to splinter into death cults that fill the neighborhoods and hold down the neighborhoods that surround Katja's entire existence there in the city. And she follows quite a bit different path. Her father was a botanist, and he was pursuing a remedy through infusions that could allow him to stay awake indefinitely, and was very close to, he was a sleep scientist, and he was very close to what he felt like was a breakthrough on that, on the night that he disappeared. And so our protagonist is, she's listening to kind of the memories of him and following his path that he would have gone down, while also trying to piece together why this is happening. Katja's mostly alone at this point. Her brother was taken because he fell asleep. So she feels a lot of guilt for that. And she also, as a child, she was taken care of by a woman named Amma, who now has become disabled, and who Katja, like, kind of the roles are reversed, and Katja now, it's her role to make sure that Amma isn't taken in her sleep. And so this world, it has it has a lot of, I would say, terror that rises up out of disturbing and broken ideology from these different death cults. It also is a world that that still has a lot of hope. I think our protagonist, and this is kind of unique for a horror game, really does make progress towards the things that are causing this to take place in the world. And so I'm really excited for people to be able to experience that. It's a full spectrum. And Robin and I talked about this from the beginning. We didn't want to create a horror game that was maybe just too focused on, like, the slasher terror dread element. We wanted it to be a full spectrum experience that at times when you think you're, maybe going to be jump scared by a monster or killed, there's beauty there instead, where you're disarmed by those things, and surreal moments, and just really enjoying experimenting with symbolic narrative elements and experiential puzzles that are really psychedelic, like really trying to push the psychedelic nature of a game experience in general, not just a horror game. And then just like I mentioned with Spec Ops: The Line, there's like a fine line here, because, like, this is still a survival horror game. This is one where you're going to have to survive several different terrifying groups, as well as beings and creatures, before you figure out why this is all taking place. So excited about that. But working with Robin on this stuff, I think every day has been it's been what I hoped, which is an opportunity to look at it from a perspective that comes from someone who's been very consistent with their vision from, like, day one, and also it comes from his heart. It's not something that it's not a formula, and I really appreciate that about Robin. It's been I don't think I've ever collaborated with someone quite like him. It's been unbelievable.
It's like I have to mention this because like we met through Robin back then, and when I heard
Yeah.
that you're gonna work together on this, I just was so excited from the very beginning because like knowing that those two super creative heads, which don't don't take this too cheesy, but like I always have a very I find it super important that it's not only a creative vision but also like how the people are behind the scene, and
Mm.
both of you are so great people also,
Oh,
and like
thank you so much.
it sounds super cheesy, but like and that's why I strongly believe that this will be such a special project, having those super different but creative minds from different creative worlds merging, but then also so great persons and personalities, and the vision, like I saw parts of the projects, and this like if you look at it at the Steam page, I will make sure to make edit to this show
I,
notes. There's so much, I don't know, I cannot put it in words. Creative visions, but also like a different kind of beauty in there. So what you're
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
like this immersive psychedelic experience, like I personally I love horror. So so
yeah.
you got me
Me
there
too.
already. So this is like the only thing which I find interesting. How will people react on that? Because horror is still a little bit of a niche. So will you be
Totally.
still able to reach even other people through that just because of having this twist? Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope people give it a chance because, you know, it's definitely a place that it comes from a different place than most horror games, I think, where um, I think that the terror that's here is is one that, maybe makes you reflect back on your own existence. There are things here that are very frightening, but at the same time, we tried very hard to create something that people who maybe don't play horror every day are still going to have a great experience with. And another thing is, like, I think this is a great game to play with like a friend sitting next to you because sometimes there's maybe aspects where you can rely on one another, or you can experience those things, those scary moments together. That can be a lot of fun. Or you can go in by yourself if you're one of those that wants to have the full immersive experience alone in the dark.
More
But
more and more
what's that?
people are also like watching others stream horror because some
There you
people
go.
want to have the experience but are a little bit too scared by themselves. So like
Yeah,
streaming horror is quite a thing.
it is. And actually, I learn a lot from watching other people play too. It's really fun to watch other
Yeah.
people get scared as well. It's a blast.
And
But yeah, I'd say this game has a vein of What Remains of Edith Finch a little bit. Um, Ethan Carter, I don't know if you remember that game that came out. It's definitely, it's got a little bit of control, if you're into that kind of tone as well.
very.
Um, and and then there's moments where we're more in the Outlast zone, with some of the death cults and things like that you're going to encounter. But we hope that like the depth of the lore that's there and the world that's there makes it worth getting through those kind of scary experiences as well.
Yeah, and also like the concept of sleep. Like as a scientist, I'm so fascinated by
Yeah,
dreams, and this is
yeah,
it was Cliffy B who once mentioned also like especially VR will be the closest thing which gets as close to lucid dreaming. So for me, like again, like
yeah,
dreaming and also like games itself or something which are weirdly connected for me in my brain, because I find it
yeah.
such an interesting thought what we can do, especially a little bit in the future also from now on, that we can use games as a medium to, I don't know. However, what I find also super interesting, I have to point this out, that is it a publisher now? it's actually rather known in the movie industry, which is also
Yeah,
so fitting for your project and your background. It's so fun. Maybe you want to
yeah.
share this, like I.
This has been, yeah, it's been so exciting to work with, like, well, just so you know, our publisher is Blumhouse Games, and I've been a fan of Blumhouse films for a long, long time. I'm also a big horror fan, and I think, you know, they've what they are is they're a publisher that not only makes horror because it's popular right now or because there's a really good pitch or something like that. This is what they really want to do in general. They want to make horror and they want to push the boundaries of horror. And it's been really fun working with them, especially because their perspective on what horror is and what it can become is like it's really big. Like they don't feel like it's a limiting genre at all. I always hear horror is evergreen, is what my friend Zach Wood over there tells me, and I love that because I think like just like that festival you were at, we're kind of a community of misfits a little bit that are into this sort of thing together. Um, and and a lot of times when I've pitched horror or when I worked on a horror project, there was always I would say a hesitancy on the publishing side, like they would be hesitant to want to go further. They want you to pull back a little bit, maybe. It's the opposite experience with Blumhouse, and they've given us the opportunity to work with some great people as well. They have like such a great circle of horror creators that surround them that are part of their crew. Like we had the chance to get character concept feedback from James Wan. We had the chance to work with Weta on character concepts for this game, so you'll get to see those in the game as well, which is, I think they really pushed it further than even we had imagined. I'll be interested if you can pick out the character concepts that they did. I bet you can. Um, and and then we had the chance to work with Luis Blaine, who's a horror fanatic and also from the horror community, and is the head of creative at Blumhouse Games there, who really gave us so much great feedback throughout development. And then also Josh Schur, who was a writer and narrative designer from the Uncharted and Last of Us games, got to collaborate with Robin and I got to collaborate with him on like the finalization of the script and the voice recording and all those sorts of things. So it's felt like a team effort, which I didn't think was possible on such sort of an extreme project that's this kind of experimental, and it's been a blast working with them. It really has.
It's like for everyone listening or watching, please the link to the game is in the notes. At the moment, you can wishlist it. Is there any? I mean, on the website it says launching in 2026. What can we know? What are we allowed to know? Where to expect ish?
Yeah. Well, I want you all to be able to play it as soon as you possibly can. And we're getting there. We're getting close. And we'll have another announcement to kind of narrow that in really soon. And so don't want to leave you hanging too much longer with such a vague release date. Um, but yeah, as soon as possible, and we're getting there. We're getting close.
So at the moment, wish list, and maybe like whoever is like watching this now, maybe you can already play it. But for now, wish list, and like I'm following on Instagram. There's a lot of cool updates on Instagram. I think there's also a
Yeah.
cool place to follow. I know we are really running out of time. Maybe we're already over time. Can I still ask you maybe one or two
Sure.
questions, especially like where are you? I still have so many questions, but like I
No problem.
think maybe we could have a second part eventually.
Sure.
Maybe like a little later when there's more details about sleep awake, because this is like such a nice conversation. This is like your thoughts are so wonderful, like and how you
Oh,
see the
thank
world
you.
and what is driving you. I find this extremely inspiring. So already thank you for everything you shared with us.
No
Um,
problem. And thank you for honestly, like since the day I met you, I've felt like an increased energy behind everything that I'm doing. And like
oh,
you're just your positivity, your smile, your the zone that you're in, the appreciation that you have for music, it means everything to me. Um, Thank you so much for being a supporter of such strange stuff that we're into.
thank you for making such strange stuff. So all this like happiness is coming for the excitement of what's. And again, like I need to underline this. Like I always find it super important. Who are the people behind this? And this is like that's why I'm so excited about this project, because like I know Robin already for some time. I was so excited to get to know you. This is, and you are such a dream team, and I cannot wait to see what you created together. So this is like really honest happiness about being excited of seeing those creative heads working together and creating such great
Thank you
things.
so
So
much.
any
And thanks for your research as well that you're doing and you're pushing forward. It's amazing all the things that you're doing.
oh, thank you. No, but back to you. Like I have
Okay,
like a
okay,
couple, like just again, I just try to have a couple of tiny questions, but I'm so curious about them,
no
because we
problem.
need a little bit the music topic. Um,
Yeah,
just whatever you want to share about. I mean, you're playing the guitar. You're sitting on a synthesizer. you, you're. I suppose you're. I mean, into heavy music. What
definitely.
what is driving you? Where can we listen to your music? Are you still in a band? What are your favorite bands? So just the tiny questions, right?
Yeah, mu music is huge for me. I most of my music, I would say, it has been game focused up till now. And so you can hear my guitar in Spec Ops: The Line. Like if you go play that, you'll hear it for several hours. We refined that sound for almost 2 years. So that was a blast. This guitar is sitting up. I don't know if you can see
Oh,
that
look
one.
at this. This is
That's the
actually a
Spec Ops.
really cool office space, the room you're in.
Thanks.
Cool.
Um, and so that's the one that's from Spec Ops: The Line, and then Here They Lie was um, I composed all the music and produced all the music for that. If you get a chance to play that on PlayStation, that one's a lot of strange Foley as well as noise music
Hmm.
and electronic music. Um, and then I would say like from the beginning, since I was a kid, I've been into whatever I would consider heavy music, no matter the genre. I like that you call it that too. It's it, it spans across several genres. Sometimes throughout the generations, it changes genres. But even my dad really got me into like luckily for me into things like Black Sabbath, which I think a lot of us have been thinking about a lot these last few months. And then from there, Deep Purple and Jethro Tull and then just leading into guitar being a huge thing for me in general with like Led Zeppelin um, and let's see here, even and then heading into more psychedelic stuff with Pink Floyd and all of that. But then I think I somehow missed. So I was born in 1980, so I missed like a lot of the 80s stuff that I'm still catching up on now. So like sometimes I hear a lot of things now, and I'm like, when did that come out? But I was probably around like 90 is when I was 10 years old. I was really figuring out what my music style was, and I had cousins here in Riverside that were into that. They had bands, and I remember just wanting to be like them. They played crazy hardcore music at the time, and they were crazy in general. It was good I didn't live in Riverside, but I just got this feeling of I want to go after something like that, and I ended up moving from Texas to California a lot growing up, and a lot of times I was influencing my parents to move because of the band I was in, or because of the perception I had of the other location. Like if I was in Texas, when I was there, the East Bay like punk scene started popping off, and I decided I like really wanted to be part of that. And my dad had like found an opportunity there, and we were there. And I ended up in in at the time, punk and ska were like everything. So I was in the jazz band playing guitar at my high school, and then in a punk and ska band there. But then from there, I like got kind of bored of that, and I was like, this isn't heavy enough. In Texas, like they're doing all this like Pantera shit still, and they're really going heavy in Texas, and I need to get back to my friends in Texas. We moved back to Texas again, and when I got there, the friends that were in my band now were like all split up and things like that. And I ended up in a different band, but always, I think, trying to, like back then it was like, are you grunge? Are you punk? Are you metal? I was probably somewhere in between all the time. I got really into my family is very religious, and I made a strong connection with the band Bad Religion at the
Mm.
time because of that. And and I think it was just like in Texas there was just like me and one other person that was into Bad Religion, and we became like best friends. Um, and so that was a huge thing for me. But then even Nine Inch Nails was a huge inspiration for me. I think the way that they were, you could call them, they're definitely heavy, but are they metal, or are they electronic, or are they both, or are they, oh, is this new thing industrial? And so started going down that rabbit hole for sure for a long time, all the way up until I think I met Robin. But yeah, in my high school there was a lot of debates about Metallica versus Guns N' Roses versus Pantera. Um, and, and then Rage Against the Machine comes onto the scene, and that kind of mixed things up a lot. I'm also really into hip hop music. I've always since I was a kid, I've always been into hip hop music. I like to use a lot of the techniques and structure from hip hop music in the weird stuff that I make. Um, and and so like a lot of hip hop and metal was kind of coming together in the mid '90s at the time, and so like a lot of friends would come to me and be like, "Oh, you like hip hop? Do you like this? Like, do you like this?" So that was really cool, and I was really familiar with the band Korn because like one of the times I lived in California, I lived in Bakersfield, and that's where they're from, and
Ah.
their original drummer was my best friend's older brother. But I was so young at the time, I just remember just banging. That's all I remember. But I think it's always been something really exciting for me. And yeah, it's like thinking about like my dad that brought me into it. Like he's still into that music back then, but I think somewhere along the way, it got too different for him. So he's still listening to that same stuff, which is fine. But yeah, I'm constantly on the lookout for new music. There's one of the reasons I moved back to LA is because of a music scene that was here called Low End Theory. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if you ever heard of that, but it was it's the it was a almost like a community-driven hip hop and beat scene, and so it was somewhere between electronic music, like techno, and hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and to me it became like a pretty influential scene for a lot of music that's really popular now. It was started by Flying Lotus, and I really looked up and still do to a lot of the folks involved with that, like individual Gaslamp Killer, Daddy Kev. There's a lot of folks around that still have like maybe they have a once a month show or something like that. But back then it was every Wednesday night. So every Wednesday I would find myself there like talking to music producers and going further into that. And then being in Berlin was amazing too because you literally can't avoid music in Berlin. Like everywhere you go, you're going to encounter it in the park. You're going to encounter it if you go out anywhere. I really fell in love with electronic music while I was there and got into modular synthesizers and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, I think when I'm not working, I'm usually still doing something with music. That's like the thing that I fall back on. But on this project, Robin and I actually started like really kind of found the tone for the project out in the desert. Like we had a session together there, and we had a few others where we really went wild for like 10 days. Um, we rented a house and set up like 4 different recording stations
Hmm.
within the house based on different types of instrumentation,
Core.
and and um, and one of them was even outside with like all of this like aluminate covering to keep the wind moving through, but uh, not make too much noise. And yeah, I think the connection that we made there, it's important for Sleep Awake, but also for everything that we're ever going to do at Eyes Out. I think the way that we started that project, it created a soul for it before we had a lot of visuals or spaces that the rest of the team could interact with yet. They could already start to feel the tone of it when we were just like in our very early gray box and things like that because of what we did out there. And we even experimented with voice creature noises and voices and Foley and all sorts of crazy stuff out there. Um, and it's about time that we do it again, I think. And it'll always be, I think, kind of the heartbeat of our work together, of our studio. And it's a blast to see the way that what you make after that is different than what it would have been if you just kind of went into it with pencil and paper or jumped into the level editor.
What is quite interesting, which is like going through the whole conversation, is your take on places and your inspiration in different places and environments had on you, also the places you worked with. No, so this is like something which, like, for the whole conversation, this I find very special. Like, I think I saw pictures of the desert session. I think you
Yeah,
this is also on a website, I think, or on Insta. But
yeah.
it's super inspiring. But this is
Oh,
so,
thank
like,
you.
what I noticed, like, while we were talking, how all the places where you lived in shaped you, how you would move to different places because of a different scene or different people or different chances. And this is so interesting, and I think sometimes a little bit rare that people are actually daring to do so. And yeah, very, yeah, this is just again a train in my head, train of thought. I have.
Yeah, it is like I think my parents got me moving around a lot at the beginning, so I didn't feel like a barrier there, and then I realized like how much of a benefit it could be to be there in those places at those specific times.
And this is the um like maybe one, if I may have two tiny last questions,
Sure.
because like I'm like extremely interested, like what is inspiring you and what is shaping you, and there. So I figured already there's a lot of music. Obviously, it seems to be a little bit the film scene, the environments, the
Hmm.
people. This is also
Hmm.
something which I find extremely interesting. Do you? What is the role of mentors in general? How do you see that?
Um, I'm definitely always looking for people that can mentor me personally. I think a lot of times a mentor is somebody who could probably be involved day to day with what you're doing, but they want you to have that moment, and they want you to they want to pass something on to you. That's something that I think a great mentor has. That like genuinely, they're not looking to maybe um, benefit their future career in some way or something like that. Like they've realized, or someone's helped them realize that it's time to pass the torch a little bit, even if it's just momentarily or in a certain space. Um, but yeah, throughout my whole life, there's been so many, and even now, I think I'm still meeting people that I can't imagine having done what they've done, and I just want to know more, and I just want to find out more. Um, but like for me personally, it's in the game industry, it's one of the most rewarding things to see someone just make progress that they didn't know that was possible.
Hmm.
One of the most enjoyable moments of my whole life was being at Jaeger and being in an area that didn't have a lot of professional game developers, a lot of people that wanted to be, a lot of people that are very technical. But we ended up with this QA and testing department that they kind of just they were very open, and they were very excited, and they fell in love with the vision of the project, and I ended up just becoming such close friends with them. And then, seeing them go from, their very first game job to, like, many of them were leads in different departments by the end of the project. And then now they have their own studios, and when I go to Berlin, I'm visiting their studios, and it's a dream come true. Like some of my favorite games that have come out have been from individuals that, like, I met when they were still working on their student projects and things like that. And so it's so exciting. I love being around students, especially ones that are like genuinely there for the right reasons. It's like I see myself like basically in the same situation, and so when there's things I can learn from them, and they can learn from me, just because I've had to go through that one thing they're trying to do several times or whatever. It's unbelievable. So, but yeah, I think um, when I take a step back and look at my life, there's several people that they stood up for me. They saw potential in me before I did. They forgave me for my weaknesses. They were honest with me about things that I could do better, and then they showed me like that. Maybe those are the things.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. This is
No
like you're
problem.
saying, like I think there's like the two roles of that. Like it gives so much, like if you are being mentored, but at some point that you learn so much being a mentor, because I mean so
Oh
many
yeah.
people are looking up to you and what you created, and that's why again I find like everything you said today very inspiring to see what shaped you, what inspired you. Um,
Thank you so
to
much.
conclude this, because you gave us already way more time than we
All
talked
good.
about. So thanks,
This has
thanks so
been
much for
amazing.
that. Um,
No problem.
I need to ask like two last questions. I swear, two.
Okay.
The
All
the
good.
the the, the I noticed the tattoos.
Mm.
Do you want to talk about them? This is always something like I recognize this one, right?
Yeah, so this is the Eyes Out logo,
Yeah, cool.
and yeah, that will always be part of me because like it's just very close to my heart, everything that I've been able to do with Robin and the team, and like feels like it's the band that I want to be in,
Cool.
which is really exciting to me. This one here, this was the first one that I got. This one was one that me and my wife Julie got together, that we designed together, that has some symbolic meaning between
Cool.
us. And then this one here,
Ah, yeah.
you can see that one. That is from my game Here They Lie,
Mm.
um, and ties into the kind of twist that's there. So you'll see that exact one if you go look around there, and then this one is more recent. It's probably harder to get on camera.
Ah, this is the best animal. They're so smart. uh,
Yeah, I
this
love
is
octopus, and
cool.
um, and I think they're the best too. But
Cool.
uh, but yeah, that one I got during this project, and it was like that one was a very, I would say, meditative experience for me. Like I went back several times and got to know the person. His name's Droopy, who did the tattoo, and his story is super interesting and
Mm.
inspiring. And so it was, yeah, it was like a little a little burst of energy for me every time that kind of went back into that one.
No. And the very, very, very last one is general recommendations, books or music or movies or games, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I would say um, one thing that was really big on this one was the Southern Reach trilogy by Vandermeer. And that also became the film Annihilation.
Mm.
And it really treads into, I would say, like cosmic horror, but also from a scientific perspective, and involves botany and things like that. And so I think of like all of the possible future kind of like alien possibilities. It's one of the creepiest, but also maybe one of the most believable in those stories, which is really cool. Um, I'd say we've been heavily influenced by the work of Panos Cosmatos, movies like Beyond the Black Rainbow and Mandy, for example. Some of our favorites, the way that they use music, the way that they use color, and symbolic narrative,
Mm.
just and it's really strong tone in those movies. David Lynch is a huge inspiration of ours. Also, another tough thing to go through over this past year. Um, I would say I'm a big fan of Jeff Noon. If you read like Bert, for example, that's very heavy psychedelic. Um, fiction, and it's that I know Robin's a fan of that stuff too. I'm inspired by a lot of Japanese horror as well. Like working at Monolith, that was one of the main inspirations there, and that's kind of always stuck with me. Like films like Pulse and Ringu and Dark Water, and there's lots that I think that the way that they deal with their kind of cultural horrors of the past and their ancestors are really interesting. Um, Big fan of the director Shane Carruth, if you ever heard of him. He's I love how like his films are small, but they hit so hard. Like films like Upstream Color and Primer, for example. Um, big fan of big fan of the Coen brothers. No Country for Old Men. I think both Robin and I are big fans of that. But also things like Tom York from Radiohead, for example, is a big one for me. He's really great example of somebody who I feel like lets his art drive him. He doesn't necessarily go for a specific genre or something like that, and he melds genres together in a magical way, which is amazing. His voice is unbelievable. I think John Carpenter is a big inspiration, both visually and with the music and the stuff that he does. Trying to think here. Always swimming in a thousand inspirations. I'm a big cosmic horror fan. Everything from like the King in Yellow to specific works from Lovecraft. A lot of them that have to do with sleep or kind of the symbolic nature of things. Also, a huge fan of Alejandro Jodorowsky and films like The Holy Mountain and Santa Sangre, things like that. And then, you know, I think we mentioned some of the games that I'm a big fan of the game Soma. I really love that game. Amnesia, Alien Isolation, Silent Hill. had some great Silent Hill kind of some new Silent Hill recently and more coming, which is exciting. Let me think. Yeah, and then I would say I'm a big fan of like a few specific artists that usually end up somewhere in the work that I'm working on, like Beksinski and Giger, for example. Always thinking back to that stuff. And then beyond that, it's experiences in nature, uh, it's experiences with psychedelic drugs, it's experiences with dreams, it's experiences with people who have passed away or who are about to. Sometimes heart-wrenching ones that inspire me to go forward. And then, you know, the looking back on just like the crazy path that I've been on so far, and it's inspiring to imagine that, like, you know, it could turn any which way from here. So let's see.
Cory, what shall I say? This was so wonderful, and this was like I just noted down so many things. There are so many really, really. I mean, there are a lot of books and a lot of movies and so forth. You know that, which I adore, and all the rest I need to
Oh,
watch and
awesome.
read and explore within the next month or so. Because this is like the whole discussion was really inspiring, and it was really 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 wonderful to see a little bit behind the curtain and what made you the person and this creative head you are now. Thank you so much for being so
Well, thank
transparent
you.
and sharing all of those really personal thoughts also with us. This has been a really, really special episode.
This is so much fun for me. It's always great to get to hang out with you, and thank you for such great questions that got me to think deeper on a lot of this stuff. It means a lot.
Thank you so much, and I would love to like continue the conversation in a
Yeah,
like second part if you want to share then, or can already
please.
share more about Sleep Awake and the developments there. And I think there's so many like more, like I have so many more. Like you got my question list, right? I think we covered like a tiny part of it, but because there's yeah, like everything you said, there was so many deep thoughts in there that we just had to jump deeper
Thank
there.
you.
So thank
Yeah,
you so much.
it's a long story. Oh, you're so welcome. Anytime. Yeah, and yeah, I'm looking forward to part two. That'll be a blast, and we'll have new stuff to reveal on Sleep Awake really soon.
Yes.
So
Yes,
thank you so
I'm
much
cheering
for
every
getting the
time
word
like
out.
crazy. Like this is like such a cool project. So again, everyone listening and um you sent me also a list of things where people can learn more about you, like probably your Instagram. So everything which Cory wants you to click on will be in the show notes down there. But certainly, like also wish list, Sleep Awake or Play it if it's already available when you're listening to
Mhm.
that. Thank you so much. And there's already a lot of
You're welcome.
love also coming from the chat. If you see this, there's a lot of
Oh,
hearts in there.
thank you. It means so much. Thank you so much.
Then have a
We're gonna
lot.
make a lot more. Thank you.
Wonderful. Then have a lovely rest of the day, and thank you for spending so much like actually overtime with us. And yeah, it's always a pleasure
Oh,
talking to you.
you have a great night. It was so much fun, and I
Thank you.
can't wait to talk to you again.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.